And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this third webinar of a series of webinars on building back resilience, the role of employers and business associations in shaping the new normal. Today's webinar is entitled The Upskilling Imperative, Vocational Training and the New Offer of BSOs Services. I'm Buthain Al-Assadi and I'm glad to be here today and moderate this webinar. To start off, let me first present today's agenda very quickly. During the next 2 hours, we will listen to a keynote speech delivered by Mrs. Francesca Rosso, labor market experts from the European Training Foundation. Then we will move to our first session in the webinar and discuss with our 3 speakers the upskilling imperative and the role of employers' organizations. In this session, we will kindly ask our speakers to tell us more about the important role that employers' organizations can play in upskilling workers. We would also want to know how these institutions can further engage businesses in the upskilling of the current and future workforce. During our second session, we will discuss the theme of upskilling the SME workforce for the digital age. And we will try to discuss how the pandemic, among other factors, accelerated the coming of digital jobs and how a lot needs to be done to ensure both job matching and job transition for current and future workforce. We will opt for a multi-stakeholder approach to mitigate labor market disruption and reduce unemployment of youth and women. So without further ado, and before we start our discussion today, let me introduce Mrs. Dolores Samud Bonici, the Executive Board Member of BUSINESSMED and President of Malta Employers Association, who is going to officially open this webinar. So Mrs. Dolores, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Welcome everyone, distinguished guests, speakers, and participants. Today we're going to talk about the upskilling imperative, vocational training, and the new offer of business support organization services. This is a very hot topic at the moment because we need to look deep into what's going to make the new world of work. If I start with the presentation, thank you. As outlined in the background section of the webinar's brochure, skills are key for sustainable competitiveness and resilience for business. And the key words here are sustainable, being able to operate effectively and efficiently, competitive, being able to compete within the local and the global market, and resilience, being able to survive change and being flexible enough to adapt when necessary. This is achieved by having the right education and training setups, having the right workers to master challenges in current transition, having access to additional upskilling opportunities. However, this is not as easy as one thinks. Constant changes and involvement keep up with the latest development, and need for everyone to work together is a constant battle. It is without doubt that the subject of skill mismatch is a complex, multi-dimensional and dynamic phenomenon. In 2018, CEDOFOP issued a report named Insights into Skill Shortages and Skills Mismatch, where they gathered data from European Skills and Jobs Survey. It stated that with mass job destruction and sectoral restructuring following the recent economic crisis, 4 out of 10 EU employers had difficulty finding people with the right skills, while unemployment rates peaked. Rapid digitalization and technological skills obsolescence and had also raised concerns about the extent to which the EU workforce is adequately prepared for the fourth industrial revolution. Yet despite worries of increasing skills shortages and gaps, about 39% of adult EU employees are overskilled and trapped in low paid jobs. Employers are, in fact, having difficulties in finding people with the right skills due to having graduates that are ill-prepared for the skills needed by the industry. This is causing lower productivity and an expense for the employer to start retraining the new employee, not to adapt in the job, but to teach the basics of the job. There is also the concept of having employees leaving the company just after the first few months. This calls for the correction of including time at the workplace in the academic courses, which will give the student the familiarization of the working world in that particular field and the practical insight of the possibilities of further specialization. This issue has to be tackled at national level by having policymakers drafting policies to match skill supply to skills demand. Another proposal could be to reintegrate unemployed and inactive employees by providing adult training to shield against career interruptions and changing skills needs. When it comes to digitalization, the table is showing past and anticipated employment growth rates in ICT and all industries between 2005 and 2025. There is a significant growth in ITC professionals and ICT tech jobs. That is happening now and will continue to happen, which requires attention. Employers and employees who are not investing in digitalization are facing fear of technological unemployment. The future of work requires certain skills, that is creating a digital divide. Certain jobs like drivers and old mechanics are expected to become obsolete in the next 10 years with the risk of automation, and therefore now it is the time to reskill ourselves in order to avoid job destruction. In the end, it is expected digitalization and artificial intelligence shall eventually take over low-skilled jobs, and employees are expected to move up to more value employment and a better quality of life. To continue with the previous slides, the increase in skills shortages and gaps are increasing and will continue to increase if we do not take it seriously. The EU... I can hear somebody talking. The EU has set a new skills agenda for Europe, one that focuses on vocational education and training, lifelong learning, digitalization, etc. There is a rising demand for key competencies for STEM subjects. It is also noted that careers education can take a different path and become more job specific. And unique training is applied, more often done in-house. This is called for in such cases where we are seeing the creation of this specialized training, which one cannot access anywhere else but at the place of work. It is important for academia to work hand in hand with industries to make sure that what is being taught at universities and vocational training institutions are in line with what the industry requires. As business support organizations, we can help out in this process by being the middle person. It will assist our employers in finding the right people, which would reflect in productivity and less costs. COVID-19 has highlighted the importance of having the right skills for strategic sectors to perform. Being digital for example, for remote working, for providing online training, for selling through e-commerce. Being flexible, adapt, working from home, taking different roles, etc. Having excellent risk change and management skills. Implementing change strategies. And in the wake of the COVID outbreak, many organizations and employees have been left wondering what practical measures can be taken to safeguard their business and employment now and for the future. Some tips for employers. Analyze the situation and define your upskilling priorities. How is the company doing? What are the company's strengths and weaknesses? On what do I have to focus? Assess the advice individual employees. Do my people have the right skills? What is the market demanding from me? Empower employees to take control of upskilling strategies. Motivate employees to think of innovative ways to support themselves by adapting to new roles, provide training, focus on new skills. Leverage free upskilling resources such as PwC's Digital Fitness Assessment. This global app helps identify the level of expertise that employees have in digital skills, such as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and other technologies. Apps like these allow users to stay relevant with recent content and provides insights through articles, podcasts, and videos. We should also take advantage of available funding schemes. What schemes are available at national and EU level? How can we tap into them? Another point is to gather up data on upskilling efforts and monitor results using digital HR tools to keep track of activity and results, such as who attends which program and what specific training each person is receiving. Finally, recognize and appreciate the achievers. COVID-19 tips for business support organizations. As business support organizations, we can assist our members by conducting research to stay informed, partnering with academia and industry to guide for the evolving demands, raising awareness through focus groups, conferences, etc., offering training programs to upskill and reskill employers, participating in local and international forums, lobbying with government, and this is very important, and participating in social dialogue involving new policies, because this is where change happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dolores, for this informative presentation. Indeed, you touched upon key issues that you are tackling today, among them the reskilling of current and future workforce. And also we share with you the view that BSO's role is very important to be, as you said, the middle institution to promote the importance of private sector engagement, and at the same time raise awareness of academia and vocational institutions that it's very, very important to work hand in hand with donors, with CSOs, with BSOs in order to reskill and upskill the current and future workforce, especially in this very, very challenging period, which is the post-pandemic and the recession, together with, of course, the digitalization of the digitalization age. Thank you very much again. So we invite all participants, please, to mute their mic for better sound quality and to unmute when they are giving the floor to speak. Thank you. Now we will now move to our first session in the webinar, and we are going to discuss with our keynote speaker. The speech will be delivered by Mrs. Francesca Rosso, labor market expert from the European Training Foundation. Mrs. Francesca, without further ado, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and good morning to all. Thanks a lot for this invitation to this important event. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today, even if only digitally and despite the difficult period we are all living. But I think that this event today is extremely relevant and also timely. Upskilling was already a priority and a key topic in the region, and I would say across the globe before the eruption of the COVID-19 crisis, and it is an imperative now, as it says very rightly the title of this event. And this is because we live in a time of constant change, and what we know is that change is faster as never been before. New skills emerge basically every day in different economic sectors, and education and training systems really have to make a huge effort to adapt and to provide people with the right skills. Both initial education and continuous education have to be completely reconsidered. If we want to have young people who can enter the labor market with the right skills, and if we want to have adults and all categories of workers to remain truthfully in the labor market. Skills are the real currency, as we say, of the 21st century, and stakeholders, institutions and companies have a very important role to play to equip people with the right skills. Talking about the Mediterranean, we all know that the labor market situation in the region was already challenging before the eruption of the pandemic, and it has been exacerbated by the COVID-19. Specific groups who were already excluded, particularly excluded from the labor market, have been hit the most by the crisis. And I talk about the region, but again, I could talk about the whole situation in the whole world. I refer, for instance, to young people who will face increasing difficulties in entering the labor market, finding their first job, or finding new jobs in general. At the European Training Foundation, we have just concluded a research exactly on the situation of young people in the Mediterranean region. The report will be published in January. And the research investigates the situation of young people who are out of employment, education and training, the so-called NEETs, but also the situation of those young people who are in employment. But we try to understand what type of jobs those young people have. Very often they are disregarded because in a way they are in, so they don't need any further investigation. But what we found out is that often they have precarious jobs, and I will get back to you on that. We also carry out two specific case studies on Egypt and Jordan, in which we have done a more in-depth microdata analysis to assess different needs subgroups and to also analyze success factors. We have interviewed also 200 young people to understand better their expectations about the future, their experiences on the market, and also their aspirations. So for today's discussion, I think that it is important to understand what is the starting point in the country so that then we can push for a collective reflection. So we can talk about what are the right skills for the specific sectors and how education and training system can really contribute to deliver those skills. But we have to understand where is the starting point, what is the context, and what are specific skills needs of different groups. So I will give you now in the next few minutes a very quick presentation of the main findings of our research so that we can then launch a discussion together. We know that youth represent a large share of the population in the country, although the trend is declining. There are 54 million people between 15 and 29 years old, forecasted to reach 62 million in 2030. And these people are ready to enter the labor market and to contribute to it if they are given the chance. They could add value. They are ambassadors of the country. They could boost the new emerging sector. They could grasp the opportunities offered by the digital and by the platform economy. Overall, I would say that they could really contribute massively to the growth and development of the country if they are given the chance. Only a minority of youth in the region, however, are in employment. Employment trends have been either steady or negative over the past decade, below 20% almost in all the country. And if the situation is difficult for young men, it's even more difficult for young girls. We see that almost everywhere, girls who are in employment are below 10%. It means that 1 out of 10 only young girl is in employment. Many young people who enter the labor market find vulnerable jobs. These jobs are characterized by precarious working conditions and little social security and protection. The incidence of vulnerable employment is very high everywhere. From ILO data, we know that many young people, the majority of young people in the country, work in the informal economy. We have ranging from 60% in Lebanon to 95% in Palestine, again, according to ILO. People work in jobs who are not in line with their skills or educational level. In the ETS, we have launched another project where we try to calculate occupational mismatch, and we found out, for instance, in Egypt, that occupational mismatch among people with tertiary education in 2016 was 18.7% compared to 10% among those with upper secondary education. Youth unemployment is particularly high and persistent everywhere. This is, of course, because youth unemployment is more responsive to business cycles than adult unemployment, and this is also because young people are more concentrated in specific economic sectors, and a disproportionate number of young people hold part-time jobs and temporary contracts. As such, they are obviously more affected by periods of economic slowdown, and they are often among the first to lose their jobs. And that's exactly what has happened during the COVID crisis, which left thousands of young people without jobs in the region and in the world. Unemployment among young women is significantly higher, as you can see from the graph. You should go to the previous slide, please. What is worrisome is that we know that all countries in the region exhibit an inverse correlation between educational attainment and employment. Despite the increased and improved educational level of the population, this has not translated into better labor market outcome of the population. This creates a paradox where higher rates of educational attainment don't lead to higher employability outcomes. And this is especially true for women, again, who have higher level of educational attainment, but fail to translate that into better labor market outcomes. Next slide. Talking about unemployment does not give really an idea of what is the situation of young people in the region. And that's why we also talk about another indicator, which is the number of people young people who are out of education, employment and training, the NEET rate. This is because a huge number of young people are inactive or disengaged. And in this sense, the NEET indicator gives a better idea of what is the real situation of young people in the country. In everywhere, a large part of the youth are NEET, and in the last decade, the share of NEET has been quite stable across the region, with the exception of Israel, where the figure has decreased substantially, and in Jordan, where unfortunately the figure has become worse in the last 10 years. And this is probably also due to the rise of informal economy, as many stakeholders that we interview for the research have told us. Next slide. However, I also want to underline some positive evolutions that we have seen carrying out our research. So first of all, is the situation of young women is changing over time. in some countries. For instance, in Egypt, we found an increasing percentage of students and unemployed, and a decreasing percentage of employed and homemakers. In particular, between 2010 and 2016, as you can see from the graph, the percentage of women in higher education has increased by 10 percentage points, and the share of homemaker dropped by 15 percentage points. That's a huge shift that further confirms that there are big changes related to gender happening. And this is also confirmed by the decreasing gender gap in the needs indicator. Always in Egypt, we have seen that despite a rather stable needs rate over time, between 2010 and 2016, there has been a reduction of the difference between male needs and girl needs from 62 percentage points to 28 percentage points. So a big change. Next slide. If you can go to the next, sorry. At the same time, and that's an important point for us, next slide if you can, we have seen that education plays still a very important role in the countries. It is true, as I said before, that higher education has also gives high unemployment rates. However, people with tertiary education also have the highest employment rate in many of the countries. For instance, in Egypt, to assess the probability of being employed for a young person, we have applied a logistic regression, and we found out that a person with tertiary education has the highest chance of being employed, almost 13 times higher chances than a person with general secondary education. Next slide. And the same was also true, for instance, in Jordan, where among all educational levels, vocational education and training was the path that paid off the most. And indeed, people with secondary education had in Jordan 349% higher probability of being employed than those with no education. And people with tertiary education had 238% higher chances. The two combined indicators seem to indicate that education has an important effect on the activity rate of young people. And let's not forget that when young people are active, they are also more engaged in society often. Next slide. There have been many initiatives taking place in the region, and we have tried to bring value to them, to underline what these achievements have been. And what the good news is that young people, youth are really high in the policy agenda of all the countries. There are many existing good practices that really deserve to be streamlined, of course addressing also the limitations which are there right now. We have seen great achievement in educational level almost everywhere across all the countries. We have seen reinforcement of public employment services. I want to mention, for instance, the public employment service in Algeria that has been basically set up within 10 years. It was totally non-existing and now is up and running. We have seen the use of partnership as a working model to connect the world of work and the world of education. For instance, in Jordan, through the establishment of the Vet Skills Development Commission and the launch of the Sector Skills Council. And also we have seen the implementation of specific programs to include specific target groups or vulnerable groups such as women. An example is the Jordan satellite garment factories, where 7,000 jobs for women have been created through the 22 satellite factories established across different rural areas in Jordan. Of course, much more is needed because the situation is challenging, as I said in the beginning. And of course, with the COVID crisis, we will need extraordinary measures to cope with an extraordinarily complex situation. Specific measures will be needed for young people and especially for young girls and women. However, I also want to stress that the pandemic could be an opportunity to accelerate the transformation toward new development models based on social, economical, and ecological transformation that put people and individuals at the heart of policy agendas of different countries. Digital and green transformation are reshaping people's life, work, and relationships. And we see that, every day, all of us can really see that. The transition shows that there is a huge shift need in skill sets to reach their full potential. Rising cultural shifts, new emerging sectors, new technology, accelerated digitalization, and new forms of digital learning are all opportunities that governments need to grasp to provide new prospects for the new generation. And in this context, skills will really play a paramount role, a very important role, because skills will be needed by young people, but also by adults to transit from one job to another. We were discussing before starting this meeting that everywhere in the world, governments have taken emergency measures to protect existing jobs. That will not last forever. That cannot last forever. So it has been a very good measure to start with, but that's not sustainable and something more will be needed. And young people really need to acquire and develop the skills so that they are able to adapt to rapidly evolving labor markets, to ensure also that they are prepared from a technical point of view, but they also have other types of skills, life skills, creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, digital technology, as Dolores said before, resilience, ability to cope with change. And I think that in this respect, specific and short hands-on preparatory training could be really important, especially related to specific skills needs that could help upskill unemployed or inactive people for their immediate labor market integration. For instance, they could focus on digital, entrepreneurial, career management and green skills. Basic digital skills need, of course, a particular attention within the current crisis, given their increasing importance. As many countries adopted to lockdowns or restrictions, a large proportion of the workforce was instructed to work remotely if possible. And despite the unprecedented disruption, the pandemic also created some opportunities in specific sectors such as ICT, e-commerce, digital marketing, finance, and insurance. And therefore, youth need to acquire digital skills to allow them to benefit from the acceleration of the digitalization. In order to make this possible, it is crucial that governments boost investment in broadband connectivity, ICT equipment, digital skills for students and for teachers and trainers. Next slide.
Mrs. Francesca, we invite you to sum up your presentations, please.
I just have a very last word.
Thank you.
So what we will be doing, next slide, we will work on specific skills needs in economic sector. A new report on agri-tech skills needs in Israel is just been released. A new one on agri-food in Morocco and automotive in Turkey will be published at the beginning of 2021. And we are also working on specific skills needs in enterprises. We have carried out a survey with UNIDO that was released in October, where 61% of companies told us that upskilling and reskilling are in high need for the coming years, not only because of COVID, but because of the transformation of the economy. And based on these results, we have launched a new initiative called Skills for Enterprise that focuses on, in particular, on business and skills development initiatives. We will have a launch event on 10 and 11 December. You have the link on the presentation where you can also register, and you are all invited to register. I will stop here, and I thank you very much for your attention, and I wish all of us a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Francesca. Very interesting indeed, data that you presented today. Very interesting data, and I think that the findings revealed that the gender disparity is very, very important in the Southern Mediterranean countries in particular. You also highlighted the importance or the issue of the informal jobs and how these hidden and unsustained jobs that make the employability of youth and women even more vulnerable and easily disrupted by any external factors, as we've seen with the pandemic. You also mentioned the issue of the NEET trend, which is a serious issue to tackle also, because it is directly linked to youth violent extremism. And one way to counter violent extremism is really to tackle or to cater for the NEET population needs. So this is really a very important issue also to take into consideration. Now we turn to our speakers participating in the first session of the webinar on the role of employers' organization. So I invite Mr. Rabih Sabra, General Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Agriculture of Beirut and Mount Lebanon, to take the floor. Mr. Rabih, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be among you on this important webinar. So I will start my presentation by a brief overview about the TVET situation in Lebanon, which will be followed by the various contributions of the Beirut Chamber in TVET-related activities. The Lebanese socio-economic context has always favored academic education with a focus on few specialties, such as law, engineering, medicine, business, and economics. However, the Lebanese economy has never been able to generate sufficient high-skilled job opportunities in order to absorb around 35,000 graduates on a yearly basis. As a result, and despite the relatively high completion rates among graduates, university education has not led to better labor market outcomes. This growing mismatch between education supply and labor market demand has fueled high youth unemployment rates. Hence, high-skilled young graduates have been discouraged from seeking employment in Lebanon, which compelled them to leave the country and search for job opportunities abroad. On the other hand, the image of the TVET education in Lebanon has often been poorly perceived and suffers from outdated curricula, obsolete premises, rigid systems, lack of technical resources, and low qualified teaching staff. Hence, instead of TVET being considered as an alternative pathway to productive and decent work, it is often associated with academic failure and poor quality provision. The association of TVET level jobs with low wages, poor working conditions, and lack of career prospects has discouraged youth from enrolling in TVET courses at secondary and post-secondary levels. According to a study conducted in 2018 by McKinsey & Co., entitled Lebanon Economic Vision for 2025, the technical and vocational education was identified among the top priority sectors, which have great effects on instigating the growth of the national economy and generating substantial job opportunities within the upcoming 5 years. Further to the COVID pandemic and economic crisis in Lebanon, the consequent challenges might be transformed into opportunities in favor of the TVET sector. Hence, policymakers must focus on improving the TVET image and modernize the related programs on a sustainable basis to encourage youth integrate the TVET schools. This should embrace continuously updated curricula, training the trainers, introducing new TVET programs to keep up with emerging and promising sectors such as the knowledge economy and new technologies, modernize the technical resources, promote apprenticeship and dual programs, and bridge the TVET students and graduates with companies in need of their skills. The Chamber of Beirut and Mount Lebanon, as a representative of the Lebanese private sector, deeply believes in the importance of the TVET education in upholding and scaling the national productive sectors. Therefore, strengthening the partnership between TVET and the private sector to revamp the outdated curricula and anticipate manpower qualifications is of extreme importance. The Chamber hence assists in enhancing and adapting the TVET programs based on the market needs, works on reducing the skills gap between supply and demand on the labor market. Since 1996, the Lebanese Training Center at the Beirut Chamber provides a wide range of training programs through professionals from academia and relevant sectors such as lean manufacturing, Incoterms, export, digital transformation, and other, in the aim to improve the skills of the Lebanese workforce. Over the last decades, the Beirut Chamber has collaborated with various European and international organizations on TVET-related projects and initiatives that fall under the UN SDGs, especially those associated to enhancing economic growth, promoting the culture of governance and responsible business, preserving the environment, fostering human development, encouraging the gender equity and decent work. In 2012, the Chamber participated in implementing the Lebanese-German GIZ program, promotion of vocational education, small and medium enterprise development, DSME, in partnership with the Lebanese Ministry of Education and Higher Education. The DSME program aimed at improving the vocational and technical education in Lebanon by strengthening its practice and market-oriented aspects. Apart from rendering advisory services for decision makers and implementing the cooperative training, dual system, and Master further education system, the program also supported the development of SMEs. Within the context of the DSME program, the DACUM project aimed at developing curricula and competencies in the cooking and car mechanics professions through a methodology based on bridging the gap between theoretical learning in vocational schools, institutes, and the professional market skills requirements. The Beirut Chamber and the European Training Foundation have built over many years a strong collaboration on various initiatives with the objective of improving the TVET system and limiting the skills gap. Related topics include the Torino process, the GEM project, governance and matching for better employability of youth and women, and topics related to the future of work, skills for the future, and strengthening bridges and links between higher education and vocational training. Moreover, the Chamber is currently collaborating with the ETF on the preparation of a study for data collection on skills needs in light of the current economic crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic in Lebanon that is based on an employer survey. On this occasion, I would like to express my great appreciation to our colleagues at ETF, namely Francesca here present, and also Simona, Aziz, Eva, Ivona, Doriana, and all our friends at ETF. The Beirut Chamber has recently partnered with the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group in order to develop the Mashriq Gender Facility. It is a peer learning platform across members of the Chamber to raise their capacity and awareness regarding women's participation and economic empowerment. It consists of a series of trainings to attract, retain, and promote the large and underutilized female talents, and aims to equip private sector companies with the tools and knowledge needed to increase gender parity at the company level and enhance the economic standing of Lebanese women operating in the private sector. Topics of this initiative will include creating inclusive, flexible, family-friendly workplaces, addressing sexual harassment and bullying in the workplace, and issues related to the COVID-19 crisis, like resilience, mental well-being, and home-based work. In the context of the European Neighbourhood Instruments cross-border cooperation, the Chamber is a key partner in two strategic funded projects that aim at supporting needs, especially youth and women, in upgrading their skills and creating job opportunities. The first project is EBSOMED, that aims at better matching the labor market skills needs generated by the port logistics, a sector with high growth potential, with the TVET offer in order to create new jobs for young people. EBSOMED is led by Escola Europea and includes the Beirut Chamber along with partners from port logistics community in the Mediterranean, namely Spain, Italy, France, Egypt, Jordan, and Tunisia. The main objectives of EBSOMED are to develop young human resources in port logistics through vocational training, to adapt them to sector needs and strengthen employability, to create dual learning programs with job placements targeting needs and women. The training courses will be oriented to the labor market, addressing young people and women, especially those belonging to vulnerable groups, to strengthen the role of SMEs operating in the port ecosystems for future job creation, to set up finally collaborative national and transnational partnerships between port logistics associations, operators, SMEs, training centers, and TVET providers, whilst introducing a public-private partnership. In Lebanon, this project would lead the way to create a pioneer TVET program in the port logistics sector. The trainings will be delivered virtually throughout the upcoming years and will cover the blue skills and international skills through simulation programs on shipping and cargo in the Mediterranean basin. This project comes in a crucial time for Lebanon following the blast of the Beirut port. The other ENI project ENI CVC project is INTERNISA, which aims at developing a network of synergies to increase the number of digitally skilled women employed in the ENI CVC MED territories via matching supply and demand in the labor market. INTERNISA is led by the region of Central Macedonia, Greece, along with 8 partners from municipalities, training and youth agencies in the Mediterranean, namely Spain, Italy, Greece, Palestine, Jordan, and Tunisia, in addition to the Beirut Chamber from Lebanon. The INTERNISA objectives are to increase the digital skills of needs in many productive sectors, particularly IT, agri-food, textiles, and innovation, to provide young people, especially those belonging to the needs and women with marketable skills. Finally, to develop the INTERNISA network of synergies to increase the number of digitally skilled women and create job opportunities. I will stop here and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabih. I think the Lebanese landscape is very much similar to other Southern Mediterranean countries in terms of challenges of skills mismatch and the employability of youth and women. And I think Mr. Rabi mentioned the training center run by the Lebanese Chamber of Commerce, which is one of the key solutions to upskill and reskill the current and future workforce. BSO's solution or involvement in offering training and up-to-date skill curricula to provide and conduct trainings in professional and technical skills needed by the private sector is very much appreciated and is a very quick win kind of solution to start with. I think also Mr. Rabi mentioned very interesting projects that the Chamber is coordinating with other donors and other program, and we really look forward to reading about the Mashriq Gender Facility Initiative, in addition to the EBSOMED and Inter-NISA programs, which really tackle the most important and vulnerable beneficiaries, i.e. the NEET population and the women population. So thank you very much. It was a very informative and insightful presentation. Now we move to Mr. Hakim Haddad from the General Confederation of Algerian Companies. Mr. Hakim. Si Mustafa, are you with us? Bonjour, monsieur.
Oui, je suis with you.
Alors, monsieur Mustafa, donc voilà, vous avez, je pense, quelques commentaires à faire aujourd'hui. Donc, puisqu'on attend monsieur Hakim qui a un petit problème avec son micro, vous avez la parole, monsieur.
Alors, je pense que tous les sujets ont été abordés, tous les détails. Donc, moi, je vais parler d'une expérience au sein du TICA. Comme on a beaucoup parlé des mécanismes d'anticipation et de suivi des compétences permettant aux entreprises de répondre au changement et d'être réactives, je pense qu'il est primordial que les entreprises sachent, connaissent très bien leurs besoins en termes de compétences. Et pour ça, nous avons mis en place des référentiels métiers et compétences au niveau de nos fédérations professionnelles respectives. On s'est rendu compte que la plupart des entreprises et la plupart des jeunes, surtout, ne connaissent pas très bien le profil dont les entreprises ont besoin. Alors, nous avons imaginé un scénario qui est très simple. Nous avons à peu près 18 fédérations sectorielles et dans chaque fédération, nous avons à peu près entre 15 et 20 chambres syndicales. Donc, nous avons essayé de mettre en place des référentiels métiers terrain qui émanent directement du milieu professionnel. Et donc, on a décidé de faire ça par fédération. C'est vrai que ça prend beaucoup de temps. En général, ça dure à peu près 6 mois pour faire un référentiel métier. Alors, l'avantage, c'est que ça permet de faire des formations spécifiques pour nos jeunes, des formations complémentaires. Ça peut toucher un petit peu tous les domaines. Et là, on a pris un échantillon dans une fédération d'une 50aine d'entreprises. Alors, les critères d'éligibilité pour ces référentiels métiers sont d'abord le secteur en lui-même. Après ça, vous avez la taille de l'entreprise, la situation géographique de l'entreprise et puis l'aspect genre. Donc, ça peut être de la petite PME jusqu'aux grandes entreprises. Et à ce moment-là, nous avons pu identifier avec des contacts permanents avec les chefs d'entreprise. En général, c'est le responsable RH qui est chargé de ça. Donc, c'est un expert qui se déplace chez ces entreprises-là avec des outils spécifiques qui permettent d'identifier les besoins. Alors, les besoins ne sont pas forcément en termes de compétences ou d'emploi ou d'employés, c'est vraiment des soucis dont souffre l'entreprise. Et le rôle de l'expert, c'est de de transformer ces lacunes ou ces problèmes en besoins réels de compétences. Et donc, ça nous a permis d'avoir une idée globale sur un petit peu les besoins de ce secteur. Bon, ça a pris beaucoup de temps pour le faire. Nous avons à peu près 18 fédérations et là, on en a fait à peu près que 4. Et on a le projet d'en faire 2 à 3 par an. Et je pense que c'est fait aussi en étroite collaboration avec le ministère de la formation professionnelle et de l'emploi. Donc, une fois que ce référentiel métier est mis en place, on le transfère au ministère de la formation professionnelle et on l'utilise aussi pour les réunions qu'on a avec les secteurs, avec les partenaires sociaux, pour essayer de classifier ces métiers et voir un petit peu une grille qui permet de situer chaque personne qui est embauchée dans une position bien déterminée. Donc ça nous a beaucoup aidé et je pense que c'est un des piliers principaux pour essayer de résoudre ce problème de l'emploi. Parce qu'on parle souvent de chômage à ce niveau-là et surtout ça touche les gens qui sont dans les études secondaires, ça touche aussi les gens qui sont titulaires d'un diplôme universitaire. Et ça permet surtout au ministère de faire des séances de recyclage, de mise à jour, en termes de soft skills, en termes même de compétences spécifiques par rapport à ce poste. Donc, de là découlent des formations, soit au sein de l'entreprise, soit au sein du ministère de la formation professionnelle. Et j'avoue que ça nous a beaucoup aidé pour spécifier vraiment les besoins de chaque chef d'entreprise. Évidemment, ces référentiels métiers et compétences sont dynamiques. Ça ne dure pas des années. On essaie de les faire au moins tous les 2-3 ans. Ça permet de faire des mises à jour régulières à ce niveau-là. Voilà un petit peu l'expérience dont je voulais parler. Une expérience terrain et une expérience qui est de plus en plus utilisée au sein du TICA. Voilà, ça c'est une sorte de success story à notre niveau.
Merci beaucoup, Si Mostafa. This is a very interesting success story and best practice used by our Tunisian colleagues in Utica. So basically, I agree that the skills, competencies, and the business references manual that our Tunisian colleagues are working on and have been working on the last few years is very, very interesting because it allows to give a very thorough mapping of the skills needed by the private sector. And as Si Mostafa explained in a very detailed way, the fact that we have 18 sectorial federations working individually on each domain makes it even a more detailed task. And also this task, which is undergone by the business organization Utica, allows an informative work for the curriculum development activity, which is implemented by tertiary and vocational institutions. So of course, when we have this mapping exercise done by business people for business people, and by business people, of course, the educational institutions at the tertiary and vocational level will be able to use this information and update the curriculum based on these initiatives. So thank you very much, Mr. Mostafa, for sharing this experience. Let's see if our colleague Hakim managed...
Juste oublier un détail, c'est l'aspect régional aussi qui rentre en compte.
Yes, of course, because if we're talking about sectorial, definitely in small countries like Tunisia, each sector or each region is basically specialized in a sector. Like, for example, the textile sector is going to be focused in specific regions, same thing for, however, some sectors like the tourism sector is across the country. But of course, the regional aspect is very important here. Is our colleague Hakim ready to go? We are receiving some questions by in the chat by our participants. So I just put a note that we will be able to answer those questions during the Q&A session. So I invite dear speakers to have a look at these questions And whoever feels that one of these questions is related to his or her presentation, please be ready to answer this question at the Q&A session. So I think I'm going to move to the second session. Please, Nadine, update me if our speakers from the first session, Mr. Hakim and Mr. Tawfiq, are available, and then we can go back to their presentations. But for the sake of time, let's keep moving, and let's start our second session. In our second sessions, we will discuss the theme of upskilling the SME workforce for the digital age, and we will try to discuss how the pandemic, among other factors, accelerated the coming of digital jobs and how a lot needs to be done to ensure both job matching and job transition for current and future workforce. We will opt for a multi-stakeholder approach to mitigate labor market disruption and reduce unemployment of youth and women. In this second session, I will be speaking about the upskilling and the reskilling of the SME workforce, and Mrs. Omhani Ambre will follow up with the second presentation. So I will be talking about skills development of the SME workforce for the digital age and the role of business services as organizations, BSOs. So first of all, we've been talking this morning about upskilling and reskilling so many times, and I know dear speakers are very well knowledgeable about these two themes or two concepts, but to make sure that our participants are also aware of the difference between the two notions, I wanted to start off by defining these two skills. In terms of why? Because I think in today's literature, the notion of reskilling seems to become more recurrent than the notion of upskilling. And this is, of course, due to the new trends in skill development imposed by the dual challenge of the pandemic-induced economic recession and the automation or the acceleration or accelerated pace of technology. So we tend to hear more of reskilling than upskilling. So what is upskilling? Upskilling is the process of learning new skills or of teaching workers new skills. And upskilling is primarily focused on helping employees become more skilled and relevant at their current position. However, reskilling is the process of learning new skills so that you can do a different job, or of training people to do a different job. So reskilling is focused on making employees available for other jobs within the organization. This is also relevant for recent graduates, of course. We're not talking only about current workforce, but also we talk about a future workforce who need to be upskilled or reskilled because their qualification lack the needed skills required by the labor market, mainly because of the outdated curricula that they followed. Also, it is worth noting that vocational education and training seems to be the right solution to expedite this process of upskilling and reskilling, because vocational training offers flexible, intensive, focused training options, in addition to being cost effective if we compare it with tertiary education. So we have to keep in mind this idea of flexibility, intensive courses, and focused training options in what comes after. Now I turn to an issue that we've been discussing this morning. It seems that there are new constraints in the labor market that shape the degree of employability. And I think Mrs. Dolores and Mrs. Francesca have already mentioned very interesting issues related to the new constraint in the labor market. So of course, automation, which is caused by the accelerated pace of technology adoption, and this is our theme today, the digital age. This has, of course, disrupted the labor market. COVID-19 pandemic, which caused a global disruption in the labor market. Technology-related new jobs, which deepened the skills gap and increased the dilemma of employers in finding the qualified workforce to handle technology-related new jobs. There are more jobs to offer in the technology-related area. However, we cannot find the qualified workforce to handle those jobs. Gender disparity in unemployment. I think we heard it a lot in today's presentations. And as we know, in southern Mediterranean countries, in particular, Jordan, Egypt, Palestine, and Tunisia, and MENA in general, unemployment rate is higher for female job seekers, although they have a higher qualification. The pandemic increased this disparity, and displaced workers are in fact more female than male. So this is caused by the disruption in the care systems, and we've seen women workers trying to mitigate the challenges of the triple burden of taking care of their children, work, and home, in addition to the fact that female workers hold positions in sectors that were hit by the pandemic, such as the services sector. The accumulated unemployment of youth and women, so the impact of the pandemic will be an accelerator of the unemployment of youth and women due to the increased number of displaced jobs. Of course, I mean, figures of 2018-2019 reports in the labor market in the MENA region were already alarming about the increasing rate of unemployment of youth and women, and we are supposed to see an acceleration at this level due to the present and the current pandemic and the recession. Hidden jobs in the informal sector. So we also tackled this issue, and these unsustained jobs are always distorting labor market statistics because we don't know where these jobs are and what are their impacts in terms of positive impact or negative impact on the employability of youth and women. So these jobs may have disappeared during the pandemic induced lockdowns, but they may increase during the ongoing recession. They may have the advantage of providing basic income for workers, but they are also increasing the underemployment of youth and women and delaying the upskilling and the reskilling process. My last point in the new constraint in the labor market is the massive return of workforce from the GCC countries. I think this is, we read a lot in the literature about this issue. We know that thousands of workers from the southern Mediterranean countries lost their jobs in these host countries. And we observed sudden return to their country of origin, mainly Tunisia, Morocco, and Egypt. This reduced considerably the remittance, which was an important source of income for workers' households. And recent literature on the impact of the pandemic on the labor market reported that thousands of households will slope into unemployment and poverty because of the loss of jobs in the foreign countries. So I just wanted to emphasize on the importance of these new constraints in the labor market because they are going to shape new trends that will be considered in the next 5 years. Now let's look at some figures to confirm how these new constraints in the labor markets have already impacted on the current and future jobs. According to the World Economic Forum survey published in October 2020 on the future of jobs, by 2025, 15% of the workforce role may become redundant, and this concerns positions such as data entry clerks, administrative assistants, general operation managers, assembly workers, etc. Also, 13.5% of emerging jobs may grow, and these are, of course, technology-related jobs. 85 million jobs may be displaced due to automation, mainly because of mainly because of automation and also recession caused by the pandemic. 97 million new roles may emerge, and again, these will be mainly technology related. And also 40% of workforce need reskilling. And this means that employers have to invest in reskilling their employees if they plan to upgrade their business and match the technology based be able to reach this technology pace to become competitive in the market. This also means that the initial training at both tertiary and vocational levels need to review their curricula and adjust them to the requirements of a future job. So these are interesting figures that have been recently published by the Future of Jobs report by World Economic Forum. Of course, these figures also confirm that skills gap is going to become more obvious, and we will observe increased redundant jobs because of technology and automation. Those who maintain these jobs will not be able to match their profiles with new jobs unless they reskill themselves. We will also observe accelerated destructive jobs, again, due to recessions and pandemic and technology and automation. Those who will lose their jobs will have to reskill themselves if they would like to find a new job, because their current skills are not enough and they need to learn more in an accelerated way. And new jobs, we also observed that the digital age have created new jobs, and youth who are in the process of selecting their personal and professional path should be advised to choose paths of new jobs. Those who are already in the education phase should consider upskilling themselves to be able to find a job, or hopefully the curricula that they are following or studying include already modules related to future jobs or digital jobs. So it is evident then that skills gap will become more important if initial and continuing education and training are not up to date. This is a graph taken from the same report, World Economic Forum report published in October 2020. And it illustrates the increasing demand for technology-based jobs by 2025. So we see that in the previous report published by the same organization in 2018, they continue, researchers observed the trend for similar jobs, and we've seen that from 2018 to 2025, there is an increasing demand for technology-based jobs in the area of cloud computing, big data analytics, Internet of Things, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, etc. So basically, there is an increasing demand, which means that now it is now very important to upgrade the curricula of initial and continuing education, both at the tertiary and vocational level, to be able to adjust to this increasing demand for technology-based jobs. Another graph that shows that in addition to technical skills, soft skills classification has also been changed, and the focus for 2025 has shifted to other soft skills. Of course, these soft skills are in very close relationship with the technical skills. So we remember that LinkedIn listing, 2018 listing and 2020, the top soft skills were communication skills, interpersonal skills, leadership and management. And now, if you look at the top 15 skills for 2025, we see that analytical thinking, innovation, creativity, the use of technology, reasoning, problem solving, these are now more important, in addition to emotional intelligence, which has become a very, very hot topic in soft skills in replacement of communication skills and interpersonal skills. I move now to an issue related to the mitigation mechanisms to overcome labor market disruptions. So far, I was trying to shed light on the major constraints that led to the labor market disruption. And I try to focus on the skills mismatch issue. And I would like to discuss the possible solutions to mitigate this labor market disruption. Before the double disruption context, which is the COVID-19 pandemic coupled with the digitalization age, we used to talk about the issue of skills mismatch causing job matching difficulties, where we have employers looking for qualified workforce, but unable to select good ones because those who are in the market do not have these skills. Now it seems that with the upcoming new jobs and the digitalization of jobs, we mainly talk about job transition and what it needs to be done to reskill the workforce to transition to new jobs. So job matching requires upskilling, and job transition seems to require more reskilling. And this issue is not only for new entrants to the labor market, but also to those who are already in the labor market and will see their jobs disrupted and will be dislocated. Therefore, they will have to look for a new job, and before that, they will have to reskill themselves. So it adds a burden on the workforce and also on employers, because we will talk about the funding issue. In order to be able to conduct upskilling and reskilling activities, it is essential to reactivate the vocational education and training solutions, because as I said at the beginning, they are the education providers that can easily adapt to the skills development process, giving their flexibility and accessibility in comparison with the tertiary level. We've seen that in many countries in the southern Mediterranean countries and also in the northern European countries, including a new curriculum at the vocational level, requires very simple legal procedures to get the approval for an intensive training or diploma to be granted. However, at the tertiary level, the process is more complicated, and sometimes it takes more than 1 year to approve a new curriculum, although it is supposed to be very relevant to the labor market needs. So that's what I mean by flexibility and accessibility. And it's very, very important to reactivate the vocational education training solutions in order to be able to mitigate labor market disruptions in terms of skills mismatch. The pandemic-induced lockdowns showed that we could put in place business and learning continuity plans using remote work options and virtual classrooms. And this mechanism should further be exploited as an immediate solution to scale up and sustain upskilling and reskilling programs. Several stakeholders have an important role to play to reduce the skills gap and develop a robust action plan to prepare youth and women to tomorrow's labor market. And there are several actions that can be taken. And I think this morning we've seen, for example, through our colleagues from the Lebanese Chamber of Commerce, very interesting programs that could tackle these issues. Also, awareness raising campaign can be organized by governments and donors and CSOs and BSOs. And the aim is to sensitize the education sector of the importance of aligning training to the needs of the labor market. Awareness raising campaign, as also mentioned by Mrs. Dolores, could be in sharing surveys and skills forecasts on the future of jobs with youth, businesses, public stakeholders, and whoever is involved in the skills development of the workforce. I will try to be faster and continue with the importance of involving the private sector. Private sector needs to be involved in the process of upskilling and reskilling the workforce, whether it's for the actual workforce or the new workforce. And there are in many countries incentives to help the private sector invest in the upskilling of the current workforce through on-the-job training, using government funding or donor funding or BSOs funding. As we've seen, there are some BSOs that offer training centers and training workshops to upskill the current workforce. So it's not only a matter of using businesses' own budget to reskill their workforce. I'll make it faster and focus now on the role of BSOs in mitigating labor market disruptions to be systematically involved in the process of skills development. Collaboration with BSOs is key because they can play an important role to address the job matching and job transition issues through skills development. BSOs can facilitate the transition from school to work by encouraging businesses to be involved in the transition process through apprenticeship opportunities, on-the-job training, training of trainers, curricular reform interventions. And I think this morning we've seen very good examples of each one of these, managed, funded, and followed by BSOs. BSOs can be involved at the supply level and support job seekers by offering career guidance, orientation sessions, job fairs, career fairs, workshops, and these employability events and the labor market intermediation mechanism could create a kind of dynamic which is very, very beneficial for job seekers and current workforce. BSOs can lead labor market surveys to identify labor market skills need and skill forecasting because they are in a very close relationship with the private sector and they can directly report their skills needs. They can also play a key role in the accreditation of training centers, and we've seen that in good examples in Northern European and Mediterranean countries. They can be involved in the certification and examination. We've seen also very good examples in the countries that offer the dual training. And they can also be involved in curriculum development and reform. And our colleague from Tunisia, Mr. Mustafa, also gave us a very good example of this close collaboration in curriculum development. I think I will go straight to the best practices that I wanted to share with you today in the present research that we are conducting on the role. I invite Mr. Hakim to unmute his mic, please. I'm almost done with my presentation. Thank you. So we are conducting a research at BUSINESSMED level. So I was saying the current research that we are conducting with BUSINESSMED on the role of BSOs in mitigating the labor market disruptions and in offering solutions to improve skills or in the skills development process. Some of the interesting examples that we have focused on as best practices to be implemented in the Southern Mediterranean countries are, I wanted to share some of them. The first best practice is called AC for SME, or Apprenticeship Coaches for SME. It is a large-scale European project launched under the coordination of Chambers and implemented by the Chambers of Commerce and Industry in 12 countries. Its main objective is to involve a large number of SMEs in apprenticeship. And the project trained 26 SME apprenticeship coaches in the Chambers of Commerce. These coaches are provided with adequate tools and skills in order to stimulate and convince SMEs to offer more apprenticeships opportunities. And these coaches continuously guide SMEs and promote apprenticeship as an important solution to facilitate the transition from school to work and enable young graduates to get the needed professional skills before they embark into their professional journey. The project developed several documents and toolboxes, and I invite you to have a look at the website and have a look at the toolbox that are available in this website. And these toolbox facilitate the interventions of coaches, and also they are available in 12 languages, and they really are good examples to follow in the southern Mediterranean countries. The second example is the Apprentice Toolbox, which is developed by the national vocational and education authorities from 5 European countries: Austria, Denmark, Germany, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, in order to promote the development of apprenticeship and also the dual-based vocational education and training programs, supporting the European Alliance of Apprenticeship. And it is also co-funded by the Erasmus program in the European Union. So the Apprenticeship Toolbox is, again, a very good example to apply in southern Mediterranean countries, because first of all, it contains very valuable tools and it gives information about policy learning, policy experimentation, practice development, what is needed in a given country to put in place and legalize and make it more structured an apprenticeship system. A third example is from our friend from France, and in particular, the Chamber of Commerce of Bretagne. They created CCI Bretagne, Contrat d'Alternance, where they have created a platform that contains more than 5,000 CVs, and it gives access to both employers and job seekers to look for employers to look for a candidate and job seekers to look for available apprenticeship opportunity. This platform is managed and funded by the Chamber of Commerce network in Bretagne, and it is a very interesting regional program that really promoted apprenticeship. So these 3 best practices show how the apprenticeship solution is very relevant to facilitate the transition from school to work, and also to enable job seekers or new entrants to the labor market to absorb or to learn and acquire the new skills directly in the job or on the job, instead of having to go through a formal training after graduation, although some examples of apprenticeship is basically also a kind of continuing training and education on the job. The fourth and last example is Exceliers, which is a platform created and funded by Union Camere in Italy. This platform offers up-to-date information regarding skills forecast by region and by sector in Italy. And again, this is another example to be able to offer up-to-date skill forecast, and it is done by a Chamber of Commerce because of their tight and close relationship with the private sector. So they are aware of what needs to be done in terms of applying or informing academia, vocational education institutions of what are the new skills needed by the private sector, by region and by sector. To conclude, again, I believe that a multi-stakeholder collaboration is key to successfully implement a robust skills development program. And I think we need to pursue a holistic approach to create active linkages and partnerships between education providers, whether academia or vocational education and training institutions, businesses, public employment agencies, civil society representatives, and also business organizations. Thank you very much. And I'm really sorry for being a little bit long. And I think our colleague Hakim is ready to go. His mic, I think, is now very well set. So, Mr. Hakim, if you are ready, we go back to the first session, and then we will conclude with Mrs. Omhani. Sorry, Mrs. Omhani, so we have to go back.
Oui, bonjour.
Oui, bonjour. Bonjour, Monsieur
Bonjour,
Hakim.
je m'excuse pour ce retard, pour ce problème technique.
Maintenant, on vous entend très, très bien.
Tout le monde va bien. J'ai suivi avec grande attention les interventions de nos collègues. Je voudrais également exprimer ma joie de participer pour la première fois à cet important webinaire qui traite d'un des volets de la mission des organisations de soutien aux entreprises, à savoir l'axe formation professionnelle. La survenue de la pandémie Covid-19 est venue bousculer nos croyances et ébranler nos certitudes. Beaucoup de pays, séduits par la mondialisation et qui se sont dangereusement appuyés sur la Chine comme usine mondiale, ont été réveillés par l'arrêt brutal des approvisionnements. Ils doivent à présent compter sur leurs propres capacités et sur leur environnement immédiat pour surmonter cette épreuve. La crise sanitaire n'a épargné ni les pays dont les économies sont avancées, et encore moins celles des pays en développement. Néanmoins, elle a eu le mérite de révéler des faiblesses profondes de l'organisation de l'économie mondiale et d'encourager la réflexion sur de nouvelles pistes telles que la solidarité internationale, l'économie de la vie et les inégalités sociales. Des pistes pour le renforcement de la modernité par une implication effective des banques et des assurances devant ces challenges planétaires que les contribuables subissent de plein fouet. L'économie algérienne traverse une phase difficile, troublée profondément par des indicateurs négatifs de croissance, de chômage, d'inflation, d'importance de l'informel. La chute brutale des recettes des hydrocarbures est venue également à causer également le tarissement des réserves de change et ce qui nous pousse dans nos derniers retranchements pour chercher des solutions locales à nos difficultés et rechercher au plus profond de nous-mêmes des capacités de résilience. Le rôle des syndicats d'employeurs et des syndicats des travailleurs est plus que jamais majeur dans la création et la protection de l'emploi. La diversification de l'économie du pays s'avère impérative. En tant que doyenne des OS en Algérie, la Confédération générale des entreprises algériennes, la CGEA, mesure l'ampleur de la difficulté et des réformes nécessaires pour améliorer la résilience des entreprises, infléchir la courbe du chômage et faire face à la récession et le ralentissement de l'activité dans la majorité des secteurs. Conscient de l'importance de la formation professionnelle comme levier d'aide à l'amélioration de la productivité et de la performance de l'entreprise, la CGEA s'est inscrite dans une dynamique se traduisant par deux niveaux d'intervention. Le premier par une collaboration étroite avec les départements en charge de le département ministériel en charge de la formation professionnelle, notamment à travers sa participation dans le recensement des filières et spécialités recherchées par nos entreprises, lesquelles sont directement impliquées dans cette sélection, je veux dire les entreprises, ainsi que dans le contenu de la formation et dans l'accueil des stagiaires en entreprise, pour suivre le volet pratique de leur cycle de formation. Le second, à travers l'investissement direct dans la formation au profit des cadres et managers des entreprises affiliées à notre organisation. Ainsi, nous sommes partenaires d'un ambitieux projet dit Taoudif en arabe, ce qui veut dire embauche ou recrutement, concrétisé avec le soutien du BIT, du Bureau international du travail et du Royaume-Uni, ayant permis la création d'une académie des ressources humaines de la CGEA. Dans le cadre de cette académie, que pilote, comme je viens de le préciser, la CGEA, nous avons pu réaliser en 2018 et 2019 six cycles de formation ayant porté sur les thèmes de management stratégique de la ressource humaine, dialogue social, santé et sécurité au travail. Ces formations ont été suivies par un nombre qui dépasse les 200, dont des universitaires et des femmes intéressés par l'entrepreneuriat. Nous avons enregistré un vif intérêt pour cette académie que nous projetions déjà d'enrichir avec des thèmes tels que le développement des compétences managériales, de leadership, communication, négociation, team building, ainsi que dans le domaine du digital. Cependant, la survenue de la pandémie, nous n'avons pas pu réaliser en présentiel ces formations initialement prévues pour 2020. La pandémie est venue donner un coup d'accélérateur à la tendance mondiale déjà perceptible vers la digitalisation. Cependant, notre pays enregistre un retard en matière de débit de connexion et de qualité de réseau, ainsi qu'en matière d'introduction du digital dans la sphère économique. Un effort considérable nous attend pour digitaliser beaucoup d'activités de services déjà vulgarisées dans de nombreux pays de niveau similaire que l'Algérie. Nous sollicitons ainsi le renforcement de nos capacités pour pouvoir offrir assez rapidement en ligne des prestations de formation professionnelle de qualité. L'effort consistera dans la mise en place d'une plateforme LMS, d'un ensemble d'outils digitaux et d'engager des formateurs ayant la capacité de s'approprier les méthodes pédagogiques et maîtriser les nouveaux outils digitaux. Nous souhaitons également contribuer à favoriser les conditions de généralisation du télétravail pour les secteurs d'activité qui le permettent et nous avons engagé une réflexion pour adapter le code du travail à cette nouvelle réalité. Ces objectifs nécessitent évidemment la mise en place d'une stratégie incluant des pouvoirs publics pour une amélioration de la qualité, de la connexion et l'adaptation du code du travail. Je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hakim, for your informative presentation. And thank you for trying so hard to be with us today. Now, I think we go back to our last presenter. We go back to the upskilling the SME workforce for the digital age section. And I invite Mrs. Omhani Ambre Naija, the lead investor, European Union Ask an Angel program, the Next Society. So Omhani, as also an expert, COVID-19 aftermath business continuity, and EBIRD international advisor for SMEs. Mrs. Omhani, the floor is yours.
So thank you for the opportunity. My name is Omhani Amber, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Sparkling Agency. I would like to be a little bit straightforward, I would say, in this presentation, and I decided to call it "What the Bleep is Vocational Learning." It refers to a documentary that went out of the screens a couple of years ago, talking about quantum physics. So we talk a lot about a lot of things these days, and sometimes we lose the meaning. So in my role as an anthropologist, I always try to understand what are we talking about. So I would like to take you quickly to the meaning of vocational learning and go back to the etymology of the word. I hope I'm not going too fast for the translation, sorry, let me know. So it comes from vocare, as you can see here on the screen. And the usual thing that we talk about is a call for something. So like for example, someone wants to be a journalist, so they would follow this call and then they would develop as a journalist. And on my side, I would like to actually focus on the voice, the vox, so different voices of people that want to express themselves. And this is the aspect I would like to focus on today. Also, I just wanted to share what is the difference between vocational and academic. Vocational is less expensive to put forward because it takes less resources. People that go on formats that are with vocational, so most probably with apprenticeship, they have less stress than academic. Why? Because they are not actually having just the final exam as the measurement of their success. They are more on the involvement and the constant participation to their daily tasks. And the last part, why vocational learning should be actually going better, because we start having youth start their careers earlier, which make them then more sustainable. The other side is the academic side. It is said that it opens to more careers, a more like wider range of careers. People can earn more money and they have more chances to socialize. Don't forget the masks. But today things are changing, and I think if we just focus on the vocation, it's not enough. Some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Ikigai framework. It is Japanese, and if you see here on the screen, if we focus only on vocation, we actually skip 4 other aspects that would allow us to be completely fulfilled as a human being in our roles. So vocation is indeed necessary, but what we found out last year when we started really working on the ground is what is important also is the passion. Like, we need to have like people that are able to develop their passion, their talents. And this is what is missing today. It is not just about vocation. Are we future ready or job ready? Because a lot of time when we talk about vocational learning, we talk about being ready for a job. But do we actually, are we really getting ready for jobs? Would there be jobs actually for what we are training on? Earlier, Buthena also mentioned the same format, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these slides that are from the World Economic Forum. Most of the time now we are training students and youth to jobs that will disappear, and we know it. So this was mentioned before. I will just skip it quickly. And when we talk about training people to future opportunities, we are going to talk a lot about STEM and digitalization. And yes, absolutely. But we will not be able to have everyone go to STEM, and we will not have everyone go to fintech, and we will not have everyone go to all these amazing new jobs with artificial intelligence. So how are we actually going to develop a model that would allow people to make their talent something that they can earn money from? And this is a question that we've been working on for a long time. Here, what we see on the screen is the coronavirus was something positive in the way that it allows people to upskill quickly because they have access to more trainings online and all that. But it's not enough. So I hear a lot with my clients, like, do I really need to change? And this is a question I'm like wondering. It's not about do we need to change. Change is already there, and I think we are afraid of change because we don't know what it's coming. But it's normal. We never know what it's coming, and this is the new trend. We have to accept that we don't know what is going to come. And if we don't actually have communities around us and people that we talk with and possibilities to understand how we are evolving as human beings, then we cannot perceive that change is actually a normal part of the process. I'm sure you're all aware that the Generation Z, generation change is coming to the market. What does it mean? They're different. They are different from all the other generation. In what sense they are different? They are different because they are fast. They are like really like the speed of light. When you talk to them, you can see that they are animated by different sets of values than we are. They are animated by how companies make impact. And I think this is how we need to start moving towards new patterns. This is a quick scheme that I will let you just focus on for a couple of seconds, explaining what is already happening. The change went from like basically a top to bottom approach to a network approach. This is where we are now, but it's not enough. Why? And Buthena mentioned it. I'm so happy when I hear multi-stakeholders, but multi-stakeholders means also involving communities. So networks are not enough. Why? Because networks are not confirmed. We have a lot of networks. Does it mean that they are going to help us? Not necessarily. So we need to move to a multi-stakeholder approach involving people from the community. This is like really clear. It's not something to be discussed. It is something that is an essential step to move forward. Why? Because if we keep on designing things that don't involve the people that will use them, it will not work. And that's why it's actually not working right now, the move from third to fourth industrial revolution. So we need to move from a SMART format to a SPARC format. We are very lucky because this is actually our values here. So SMART is the usual way that we used to do, like, for example, project and everything before. So the usual specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time-bound, it's over. Why? Because now we need to put people together and start to think in groups and start to think formats that can actually change in the process. We launch a program, and in the middle of the program, we are able to change it. This is what we need to do. And we started actually implementing this kind of program since last year with Emirati Youth. And we continued this year during COVID, and we had a very interesting board that grouped experts from worldwide and different specialties. And we actually designed something that is very unique. Talking about vocational learning, are we there yet? We are not there yet. Why? Because we are still talking about leadership. We are still talking about jobs. And it's over. Leadership, it's over. We need to move towards engagement. Why? Because leadership is still top to bottom. And here, if we want to move forward and change, it needs to be bottom up, and it needs to be involving people. So the leadership, yes, it's fine, but it's not going to be enough. If we don't have communities that will support efforts from the companies, we will not move forward. If we don't have people that are engaged because they know that their company is making a difference in the economy and for the people, it's not going to work. So this is actually from all the documents I'm sharing are all from official sources, and the big fives. So this is like a simple format that explains the change from basically leadership to engagement. Vocational versus multi-potential. Vocational is maybe now, okay, but it's not going to be enough for the Z generation. Why? Because the Z generation is not going to keep a job for a long time. And this, I have to say it loud because I don't hear it often. Generation Z is multi-potential. What does it mean? If you look at them and if you look what they do, they are YouTubers, and they are supersonic. So they would be most probably the first in like a sports activity. In the same time, they want to develop their business. At the same time, they want to do an internship. They want to go for Jefferson training. They want to do everything. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that they are crazy. It means that they have a brain that is wired differently, and it's a multi-potential brain. Sorry, am I running out of time? How long do I still have?
No, that's fine. But Mr. Tawfiq, if you can unmute your mic, please. Thank you.
So we need to create spaces for this youth that is going to actually go very fast. We need to offer them opportunities to express their talents. And this is what we are moving. We are moving towards more like jobs. It's not going to be jobs anymore. It's going to be more like freelancers models. And more than freelancers, it's going to be a sustainable consultancy. We are still now in formats where we have jobs and we have freelancers. In the middle, there is this new dimension that is being created right now, and it's the sustainable consultant. What does it mean? It means that we would need people that have very strong skills in problem solving, but is multi-range. They are not specialized in something. They are specialized in finding solutions. How does it work? It works in designing together. The multi-stakeholder approach is definitely relevant. I'm very happy to be here today because we started working on something last year. And when we started working on this, people really looked at us as like, what are you doing here? And what is the purpose? And what do you want to achieve? And what's your plan? And I was like, we don't really have plans. We actually want to give youth opportunities to express their talents. And they're like, yeah, but this is not enough. What do you mean it's not enough? Like, is there like places where youth can actually go and express their talents? I haven't seen many. So we started working on the sparkling. I'm going to stop talking for 1 second and I'm going to show you what we are. I actually would like to show you this. Yes, so it is empowering youth and communities to generate their own opportunities. I'm going back to the presentation, and we basically created this space with experts worldwide that are acting as, not as mentors, that are acting as basically a belt of security to allow this youth to just express their talents and solve like really community challenges and see the world, so meet other people that would make them understand things better. We are happy because with this initiative, we managed to actually do a lot of work. 500 interviews, the whole team is worldwide and online way before COVID, so that's also actually a very big pride for us. More than 150 events and 3 international awards and 1 token of tolerance. This is only in 1 year, so that's why I'm talking about exponential growth. So we are developing a model that is allowing you to actually grow and really reach their full potential very quickly. What does it mean for companies? Because this is what we don't, like we don't make the link and say, okay, you're going to let these people do their talent. And what does it mean for the companies? It means that we are creating companies where people feel they belong. And this, we never talk about it. And if people don't feel that they belong in their companies, well, I can assure you that they won't stay for a long time. So there's really a necessity to develop initiatives and programs that would empower your employees to basically be able to express their voices. And this, I will go back to the first slide about Vox. I'd just like to finish this presentation with a poem that I wrote actually for the opportunity. Because I think now, today, more than ever, that we need hope more than fear. We designed models and programs and trainings and degrees that are based on risks and taking risks and not risks, and we forget about the people. So I'd like to finish on this note. So just before that, going to the poem, I'd like to let you know that I'm very happy to be talking with BUSINESSMED because I think it's the first people when we talk to them in Tunisia that understand what we're actually doing. And I'm looking forward to 2021 and the next opportunities to work together, because now we are developing the program for 2021 and we are signing with a couple of partners. Finishing, have faith, come rain or come shine. More than achieving, it is today about believing that better days are yet to come and many selves are yet to shine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hani. This was really very, very interesting presentation, very informative and insightful. We agree with you that it has to be a journey from empowerment to engagement. Generations that is very different. We see it from our nephews, children, and students, for those who are also involved in teaching. This is a very new generation, and its characteristics, its state of mind is very much different from our old generation. And the multi-potential that you've talked about is here. And it's I think if you look at the soft skills, 2025 soft skills priority, as mentioned in the World Economic Forum 2020 report, we've seen that even soft skills have been changing. So we talk about analytical skills, problem solving, creativity, emotional intelligence, and these are very high order thinking skills. So it goes hand in hand with the potentiality that you were discussing, and that you were nicely trying to explain that it has to be very important. So when we talk about vocational education and training, it's not only by making Generation Z a plumber or any other job, but it's also taken into consideration or the multi-potential of this young learner. And we could have a very creative plumber that could create new things because as a matter of fact, the new generation has multiple skills to develop. So thank you very, very much, Hani, for these very insightful addition to what has been presented today through our speakers. We turn now the mic to Mr. Tawfiq, who has finally joined us. Mr. Tawfiq Sharadi, President of the Employment and Training Commission of the National Construction Federation and member of the Board of the Human Capital Commission. So Mr. Tawfiq, if you can unmute your mic, the floor is yours.
Ok. Bon, d'abord, bon, je vais parler en français.
Oui, d'accord. Bonjour, Monsieur Tawfiq. Donc voilà, c'est d'abord.
Oui, je suis désolé d'abord parce que j'ai eu quelques petits problèmes de connexion. Je suis actuellement en déplacement en Égypte, au Caire. Et bon, premier déplacement après le Covid. J'assiste à une réunion des entreprises africaines au Caire et j'ai eu quelques problèmes pour me connecter depuis tout à l'heure. Voilà, donc j'ai été obligé de descendre à la réception et de me connecter. Donc je suis à l'hôtel, excusez un petit peu tout cela. Voilà, donc si vous, est-ce que je peux agir avec vous? J'ai une présentation à présenter.
Oui, bien sûr, allez-y.
Bien, voilà. Donc, tout d'abord, une petite présentation de la Confédération Générale des Entreprises du Maroc, qui est une association créée en 1947 et qui représente le secteur privé auprès des pouvoirs publics et institutionnels et s'exprime au nom de ses 90 membres directs et affiliés. Alors, elle a plusieurs missions, dont notamment celle qui nous intéresse, c'est promouvoir la formation tout au long de la vie des salariés des entreprises. Donc, à cet effet, il y a plusieurs commissions thématiques qui sont créées au sein de la CGM et qui sont toutes au service de l'entreprise, dont notamment la commission capital humain dont je fais partie. Alors, cette commission de capital humain, elle a plusieurs priorités. La première priorité, c'est la formation professionnelle. Donc, c'est la réforme de la formation continue, contribuer à l'efficience du système de l'enseignement et de la formation professionnelle, réponse à l'expression de la demande des adhérents en termes de formation. Deuxième priorité, c'est bien entendu l'emploi. La formation professionnelle est bien entendu liée avec l'emploi, donc contribuer au développement des systèmes intégrés d'observation du marché de travail, gestion prévisionnelle des emplois et des compétences par secteur et par territoire, mécanisme d'évaluation, programme d'insertion, etc. Et puis, troisième priorité, c'est la recherche et développement, donc en partenariat avec les différentes entreprises et différents établissements de formation au Maroc. Donc, si vous voulez, tout d'abord, un état des lieux de la formation au Maroc, formation professionnelle, j'entends. Donc, nous avons bien sûr le ministère de l'Éducation nationale de la formation professionnelle qui s'occupe travaille sur deux volets. La formation professionnelle continue, avec la formation continue en cours d'emploi, avec à l'initiative de l'entreprise, à l'initiative de l'individu, dans une perspective d'employabilité, et la formation initiale, donc avec la formation formelle, notamment la formation par apprentissage, la formation en alternance et la formation résidentielle qui est bien entendu la plus courante, la plus répandue, je dirais. Et puis une formation informelle qui est en cours de mise en place, notamment la validation des acquis de l'expérience et la validation des acquis de l'apprentissage. Alors, si vous voulez juste ce petit graphique pour montrer un petit peu le montant de la taxe de la formation professionnelle qui est récoltée par les entreprises. On est à peu près, vous voyez un petit peu sur ce graphique, nous avons à peu près 0,2, nous avons une taxe professionnelle qui représente 1,6% de la taxe de la masse salariale des entreprises qui est récoltée au Maroc. En comparaison avec l'Italie et l'Espagne, vous voyez que le gap est quand même assez important, que ça reste quand même assez faible. Et si vous voulez, le pourcentage des entreprises qui réalisent la formation continue au profit de leurs salariés également est assez faible. On est à 1%. Si on fait un benchmark international, on est quand même assez loin. De la même façon, pour les pourcentages des salariés qui sont bénéficiaires de la formation continue, on est quand même assez loin. Donc, on voit bien qu'il y a un travail encore très important à faire pour justement arriver à des pourcentages convenables. Alors, donc, au niveau de la vision politique et stratégique de la formation professionnelle, nous avons un cadre juridique assez développé. Nous avons un système de financement qui mutualise les ressources à travers la taxe de la formation professionnelle. Et on a un arsenal juridique avec deux lois relatives à la formation par apprentissage et l'alternance et une loi qui confère un statut à la formation professionnelle privée. Et bien sûr, la dernière loi, qui est la loi 77 sur la formation professionnelle, qui est en cours de mise en place. Gouvernance de la formation professionnelle au Maroc, c'est une gouvernance tripartite, hein, donc avec l'implication des employeurs et des syndicats, donc avec les syndicats des salariés, des employeurs. Nous avons donc également une gouvernance tripartite de la formation en cours d'emploi avec les comités centrales et comités régionaux. Quand je dis gouvernance tripartite, bien entendu, c'est le gouvernement, la CGN et les syndicats. Alors, vous voyez un petit peu le schéma de la gouvernance de la formation continue. Donc, nous avons le ministère de l'Éducation nationale, la taxe de la formation professionnelle, les comités centraux, les GIAC que je vais présenter tout à l'heure, qui sont des groupements d'aide et de conseil aux entreprises, et donc qui vont sensibiliser les différentes entreprises à travers des contrats pour faire justement de la formation continue auprès de leurs salariés. Tout cela est bien entendu piloté par l'Office de la formation professionnelle, qui est l'établissement public de référence en matière de formation continue, de formation professionnelle tout court au Maroc. Donc, pour ce qui concerne l'alternance et l'apprentissage, donc le Maroc dispose d'une expérience de formation en milieu de travail qui date depuis 1996 pour la formation alternée et de 2000 pour la formation par apprentissage. La stratégie 2021 de la formation professionnelle prévoit de porter la part de la formation à 50%, on est actuellement à peu près à 18%. Donc le gap est quand même assez important. Je ne pense pas qu'on va y arriver à l'horizon 2021, mais en tout cas, c'est un souci qu'on essaie de partager avec le gouvernement pour accélérer un petit peu la cadence, pour arriver justement à ce pourcentage de 50%. Donc nous avons, bon là sur ce slide, on a un petit peu les différents... on explique un petit peu au niveau de l'alternance et au niveau de l'apprentissage, quelles sont un petit peu quelle est la réglementation. Alors, je parlais déjà tout à l'heure, donc c'est le groupement interprofessionnel et d'aide de conseil aux entreprises qui sont créés pour sensibiliser la mise à niveau et l'amélioration des compétences de leurs cadres et salariés de la formation aux emplois.
Oui, d'accord. Donc, il vous reste plusieurs slides?
Oui, une dizaine de slides. Je suis vraiment désolé, mais là...
While waiting for Mr. Tawfiq, I think we can engage in a quick discussion and consider some of the, or actually two questions that were asked in the chat. One related to the funding and the funding for the cost of reskilling and upskilling. And I think another one came about labor market information system. So I think Mr. Tawfiq was basically talking about the examples in Morocco, how business associations promote or work hand in hand with the private sector and government institutions to be able to allocate a budget and pay for or reimburse training fees. So whenever businesses would like to offer training for their actual workforce, the cost of this training, whether it is upskilling or reskilling, is reimbursed by the government. So this is in Morocco, and similar facilities are offered in Tunisia. So what is the case for other countries? Are there other modalities to lift the burden of paying more to training and upskilling and reskilling the actual workforce? So dear speakers, would you like to say something about this issue? How much it's going to cost for companies to be involved in the upskilling and reskilling process? Yes, Mrs. Omhani, go ahead.
As far as I know, the French government released actually a possibility to be trained for almost like everyone as long as they worked for 2 years, at least in France recently. This is actually a good opportunity. Why? Because the budgets are actually there. It's not how much it's going to cost. There are budgets that are present everywhere in the world for training and upskilling, but they are blocked and it takes a long time to put them forward. So now the French government actually alleviated that, and it's a training that is online to develop a set of trainings that people are interested in too. So it goes from management, supply chain, building your own company, and it's with l'École Française as far as I remember, and it's free as long as people worked for 2 years, because they accumulated the training slot that they need to basically have it paid. So it's actually in France, as far as I know, it's already paid forward. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you, Mrs. Omhani. There is a platform in France called Mon Compte Formation, and it's free of charge, and all French workforce are able to access it, whether they are employed or unemployed. And it offers both face-to-face and online training facilities. And it's very well managed through the platform, and you can log in and have your login details, and it's available for all French employees. Yes, I think it's a very good example to follow. Any other suggestion on this? Yes, Mrs. Francesca.
Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, I just wanted to mention that obviously the cost of training is not for the cost that only the company should take care of. I mean, the challenge is there, and there really need a partnership approach and a sort of multi-stakeholder approach. Government has to intervene. In the European Union, in July, the European Commission has released the new skills agenda. And the idea in there, one of the many ideas in there, is that upskilling is a right of any person. So that, I mean, there is a real paradigm shift. Every person has the right to get up and be skilled. And there are many discussions going on as individual accounts, for instance, on which European citizens would have specific funds. Those are ideas, those are projects, but really the discussion going on there is very intense. And I think really we need to take it, and company, government, institution need to take this subject from a different perspective. Skilling is an investment, it's not a cost. It's an investment that is a very long-lasting discussion. Education as an investment, but it is an investment because then your workers, you will increase their productivity, and then obviously you also contribute to the company and to the growth of the
Thank you. Thank you very much, Francesca. I agree with you that it's not only a matter of waiting for funding from the government, but it is an investment that private sector businesses have to be engaged in this process. Mr. Tawfiq, you are back. We started our Q&A session while waiting for you to resume your presentation. So we wanted to start discussing some of the questions that we received from the chat. So now you can go back to your presentation, and you can share it, and we are listening to you.
Ok, donc je disais que nous avons plusieurs GIAC qui sont des groupements d'aide et de conseil aux entreprises, qui sont donc des associations à but non lucratif de droit marocain, qui sont financées par l'État, par la taxe de la formation professionnelle, mais qui sont gérées par des professionnels privés du secteur concerné. Donc on a plusieurs GIAC, le GIAC textile, le transport tertiaire, etc. Ce sont des outils très importants pour sensibiliser les entreprises à la formation continue, pour les informer, les assister et même les subventionner dans le cadre de la taxe de la formation professionnelle. Nous avons également créé il y a 3 ans un outil très important qui est l'Observatoire des branches, qui est une structure paritaire avec la CGM et le syndicat, et dont la mission est de doter les branches professionnelles, sectorielles, fédérations et branches professionnelles d'un outil de veille stratégique permanente pour faire de la prospective, mais aussi d'un système d'information relatif aux emplois métiers et compétences. Alors ces missions sont essentiellement deux types de missions. Donc d'abord un diagnostic stratégique. Donc chaque branche peut faire un diagnostic stratégique pour voir un petit peu quelle est la situation de la branche en matière de formation. Et puis ensuite, établir une ingénierie de formation pour cette branche qui est constituée donc d'une analyse prospective de la déclaration formation-emploi avec un plan d'action récurrent sur 2 ans. Donc, ce sont deux missions très importantes qui sont financées par le budget de la taxe professionnelle et le budget est d'à peu près 200 000 euros tous les 2 ans. Donc, 100 000 euros pour le diagnostic et 100 000 euros pour l'ingénierie de formation. Et suite à cela, donc, suite à l'ingénierie de formation, il y a un plan de formation groupé qui permet aux entreprises d'avoir de la formation professionnelle totalement gratuite, c'est-à-dire financée par la TFP, ils n'ont rien à payer. Donc, s'ils s'inscrivent dans le cadre de cette ingénierie de formation, ils vont pouvoir recevoir de la formation continue au profit de leurs salariés sans rien débourser. Donc, on a donc le schéma est le suivant. Donc, les associations professionnelles donc, font appel à l'observatoire du branche qui va faire un diagnostic stratégique, une information une ingénierie de formation qui va se concrétiser par la suite par un plan de formation groupé sectoriel, bien entendu, pour chaque secteur principalement. Alors, nous avons donc ce graphique qui montre un petit peu le système, comment ça se passe au niveau du système intégré du marché de travail, donc la composante sectorielle, qui passe par l'observatoire du branche de l'ingénierie de formation. Je passe rapidement. Alors, nous avons également des établissements qui sont en gestion déléguée, qui ont connu un grand succès au Maroc. Donc, ces établissements sont gérés par les professionnels. Donc, l'objectif global de ces établissements, c'est le renforcement du partenariat public dans le domaine de la formation professionnelle et qui permettent, si vous voulez, de renforcer les liens entre le monde du travail et le monde de la formation et assurer ainsi une meilleure adéquation de l'offre avec les besoins en compétences des entreprises. Ces établissements donc, sont dans le cadre d'un partenariat de convention de mise en place des établissements signés entre l'État et des branches professionnelles, avec une création d'une société anonyme qui va gérer ces établissements et donc une convention de gestion déléguée conclue entre l'État et la société anonyme. Donc, les instances de gouvernance, ce sont un conseil d'administration, un conseil scientifique et des commissions d'octroi des subventions. Donc, ces établissements sont subventionnés par l'État. L'État va donner le terrain, les équipements, la construction et c'est le privé qui s'occupe de la gestion, moyennant une subvention qui est donnée par l'État, par l'État dans le cadre de la formation, dans le cadre du budget de l'État, et qui permet donc aux entreprises de s'occuper directement de la formation de leur secteur. Voilà. Actuellement, nous avons 2 établissements en fonction, donc le textile, l'énergie renouvelable, l'aéronautique, l'automobile, etc. Et puis 5 sont en cours de construction, notamment avec l'appui du Millennium Challenge, donc par exemple dans le BTP, la logistique, la boulangerie. Donc tous ces établissements sont des établissements qui sont gérés directement sans aucune intervention de l'État. Donc c'est vraiment le privé qui s'occupe de la formation depuis l'ingénierie de formation jusqu'à la délivrance des diplômes qui sont reconnus bien entendu par l'État. Et les différents établissements qui existent actuellement connaissent un taux d'insertion d'à peu près entre 80 et 90%, ce qui est quand même très important. Nous avons également mis en place au niveau du Maroc un cadre national de certification qui permet de certifier les différentes formations, donc un cadre de certification en collaboration avec ETF, avec European Training Foundation, donc qui concerne, qui est une grille, si vous voulez, à 8 niveaux et qui se base sur un certain nombre de descripteurs sur le savoir, le savoir-être, l'adaptabilité, la complexité, l'autonomie et la responsabilité. Bon, c'est le cadre national de certification étant mis en place. La structure de gouvernance, parce que nous voulons que ce soit une agence autonome qui s'occupe de l'établissement. Donc, alors, par le biais de ce cadre national de certification, on peut analyser les besoins différentes certificats en fonction des technologies, des procédés, des méthodes, etc. Donc, nous avons, je dirais, pratiquement tous les secteurs ficheries MEREC et nous positionner ces ficheries MEREC par rapport au cadre national de certification et tout cela donc, va aboutir à la fin par un bilan de compétences et par un plan de formation qui peut être basé sur un bilan de compétences et des formations éventuelles de perfectionnement pour augmenter en compétences et pour augmenter au niveau des certifications. Donc, vous voyez un petit peu un modèle de fiche d'emploi dans lequel nous avons les différents descripteurs, différentes évaluations de niveau pour arriver à positionner les différentes certifications qui sont en cours. Bien sûr, nous avons eu une loi de la formation continue qui a été établie en 2019 et sur laquelle il y a un certain nombre de mises à niveau pour répondre aux postes de travail, etc. Alors, la nouveauté, c'est qu'il y a une nouvelle structure qui va gérer la formation professionnelle. Alors là, nous sommes en train de discuter avec le gouvernement parce que pour la CGM, nous voulons que cette structure soit totalement indépendante, alors que le gouvernement insiste pour qu'elle reste au niveau du ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Nous trouvons que ce n'est pas tout à fait compatible. Il faudrait qu'elle soit autonome. Là, les discussions sont toujours en cours. Autre nouveauté, c'est que ça arrive important. Et il y a aussi l'instauration d'un système de validation des acquis professionnels, donc la VAE, etc., qui va permettre à chaque bénéficiaire d'identifier les compétences qu'il a acquises au cours de son. On va faire reconnaître au moyen d'un diplôme. Et puis, nous avons également un concours qui a été lancé par Sa Majesté en 2018. Ce sont les cités des métiers et des compétences, qui sont des structures multisectorielles fonctionnelles dans chaque région du Royaume. Il y en a 4 qui sont actuellement en cours de construction. Et donc, les 8 autres vont suivre. Ces 4 grandes structures multisectorielles doivent démarrer en septembre 2021 pour les pierres. Et ce sont donc ils vont être basés sur des méthodes pédagogiques privilégiant la maîtrise des langues, l'approche par compétences et accordant la priorité à l'implication des professionnels. C'est des méga structures qui vont être gérées directement par le privé, hein, donc dans le cadre d'un système proche de l'IGD dont j'ai parlé tout à l'heure, c'est-à-dire de la gestion déléguée. L'État va construire et va déléguer au secteur privé la gestion de ces établissements. Ces établissements sont aussi basés un petit peu sur le principe de la mutualisation, dans un esprit d'optimisation de l'utilisation des ressources disponibles. Donc, c'est vraiment des grandes cités dans lesquelles on va trouver un petit peu tous les secteurs, avec une mutualisation des carrières, des bibliothèques, etc. C'est un projet très, très important qui est en cours, qui nécessite un investissement très important, mais qui avance même assez bien. Alors, au niveau de notre commission, donc la commission capital humain, nous avons aussi également pas mal de coopérations, que ce soit avec l'ETF sur les qualifications pour la Méditerranée, pour l'employabilité dans la Méditerranée, le processus de Turin, la gouvernance régionale, etc. Tous ces projets, nous les menons avec ETF. Nous avons également des projets avec le British Council, avec BUSINESSMED, avec GIZ, avec d'autres pays. Nous sommes aussi également nous appliquons à partager un petit peu notre expérience en matière de formation professionnelle avec des pays, avec certains pays africains. Je noterai par exemple un groupe d'impulsion économique de Côte d'Ivoire qui marche très bien, et d'ailleurs nous recevons la semaine prochaine nos collègues ivoiriens, parce que nous sommes en train de les aider à monter un observatoire des branches, similaire à ce qui se fait au Maroc.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Toufik. On a bien fait de vous attendre parce que votre présentation est très passionnante et très intéressante. Vraiment, vous avez présenté pas mal d'activités, de projets qui ont vraiment beaucoup d'intérêt si on lit tout ce que vous avez dit et présenté avec la thématique d'aujourd'hui. Donc, je pense que c'est très intéressant tout ça. I switch to English. I think this was a very valuable and interesting and informative presentation. Our friends and colleagues from Morocco are very, very active. And I can see that they are doing extraordinary work to link up the private sector with the needs of the labor market. And there is an involvement of the public entities, and there is funding investment in the upskilling and the reskilling process. And I think we see some common points between what Mr. Mustafa Bakouche discussed briefly about les référentiels métiers et compétences and the role of federations in working on the skills development aspect. I also gave some examples of the certification and accreditation. And I think Mr. Toufik also mentioned a very interesting project in collaboration with the European Training Foundation. And the very interesting aspect also is the autonomy. This work is done by the private sector, for the private sector, and it's managed in a very autonomous way. Donc, on vous remercie, Monsieur Toufik. I invite our speakers to interact if you have specific questions to ask to one another. So I invite you to unmute your mic so that and you can raise your hand if you have a particular question to ask for a particular speaker. Let's do that for 5 minutes and see if we would like to engage in speaker-to-speaker interaction. Yes, Mrs. Francesca.
Yes, maybe just very briefly to thank the organizer and the other speakers. I think that it was really an amazing exchange and a lot of information provided. Thanks a lot also to our partners. It has been amazing to see some of the people we work with constantly and that unfortunately we're not being able to meet for the past 1 year, really a pity. But I think we keep our objectives and those go on despite of the difficulties. One point I wanted to mention that really inspired me was one of the things said by Ms. Omani about the end of leadership and to say the need to engage with communities to support the effort. I think that's a very important point because that's also a new working method, a new working modality we all have to engage in, not only as international community, which I represent, but also as institutions, as partners in the countries. At the ETF, we are going exactly towards that engagement. We've been always working with the stakeholders in the country. That's really our way of working, but now in the new strategic perspective that we have adopted and will run till 2027, the idea is really to co-create the knowledge with the partners, with the community, with the stakeholders in the country, with the research community, and there is a huge research community in the countries of the Mediterranean to really try to untap the potential and to give value to what is happening in the country. We have always done that, but in a way now we really want to go into that direction in a more systematic way. And I think that's also a way to respond to the COVID crisis. And Vocational, you say this very well in your speech, this double imperative. On the one side, or this double crisis, or this double challenge, if you want. On the one side, the digitalization and automation. On the other side, the COVID crisis. I mean, we need to be more inventive, we need to be more innovative, and really working together could be not just a logo or not just a sentence, but a real way to make things go in a different way. Thanks again to the organizer and to all the other speakers. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Francesca. Mrs. Dolores, would you like to add anything?
Yes, in fact, I was very pleased with Tawfiq's presentation. We didn't wait for the pandemic era to train and reskill. In our country, training and reskilling was ongoing. This was a setup between EU funding to Malta, and these funds were given back to applicants who wished to study further. And besides these, that is called the training grant. And besides these, we saw the opportunity of people who were sitting at home or minding the children at home to use their time to retrain and reskill. So our association, it's not only our association, but all employers association in Malta, took the opportunity to do at least 2 or 3 webinars per week with different subjects, starting from updating on the latest legislation to upskilling in various aspects and in various sectors of the business. So we use this time where people had time on their hands to actually enrich the employability of the employees. And also, if I may comment on, I think it was mentioned twice in our discussion about the illegal or the black market work. I think part of the recovery has to be that we have to legalize and bring forth these people who work in the low skilled or cleaners or whatever they may be, bring them on board, because eventually, if they do not retrain, they will be left behind. And Europe's motto for the following program, 2021, is not to leave anyone behind. And I stress upon this because if these people are left in their undeclared work or whatever, they are going to be, what shall I say, a burden, crudely put, a burden on society in the future, with no pension, no social assistances, because they have never contributed. So let's look at this aspect as well, because bringing them on board will create an even more complete active citizen economy.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dolores. I think the problem of informal jobs and the informal sector have to be raised and have to be tackled very quickly. And we've seen that new projects that were designed and that will be implemented to tackle the issue of the post-pandemic and its impact on the labor market. Sometimes we find that these projects that they would like to focus on supporting and providing technical assistance to startups and small businesses and home-based businesses. One of their criterion of selection is to discard the businesses that are in the informal sector. And I think this is not a good decision to make. I mean, we should not use this as a criterion. On the contrary, we should handhold these small businesses, especially because they are run by women and they are run by vulnerable people, sometimes even people that belong to the NEET category that we talked about today, and try to help them out in order to legalize their small businesses so that they become eligible to funding, eligible to technical assistance, and it's really a hand-holding process that they need to go through. And I noticed that in many projects that are in their inception phase now, they would like to help out startups, but they would like to work with legalized startups. So let's help them first become legalized, and then they will become automatically eligible to any funding scheme. So this is just a note to add on Mrs. Dolores' speech. I think we have.
Can I make a further comment about this?
Yes, go ahead,
please?
Mrs. Dolores.
There is also, we're not talking only about low skilled and lower level of work. There is also a new generation coming up, people who work from home and sell online. They even do not declare their gains, they get away from it. So there again, we have to embrace this group of adventurers, if I may call them like that, and be very specific about their rights and their duties towards citizenship and activity in the economy.
Yeah, true. I'm trying to read the questions that we are receiving from the participants, and I have one question here. What are the topics that you recommend to be focused on for a strategic planning for Mediterranean area for startup projects? I don't know if someone has a quick answer for this. So topics that you recommend to be focused on for a strategic planning for Mediterranean area for startup projects. Anyone who would like to? Yes, Mrs. Omhani.
Thank you. I would like to understand the question actually better. What does it mean? Like, because I don't
topics,
get it.
Yeah, we didn't get it, so we're trying to get it together. So the topics that you recommend to be focused on for strategic planning for startup project. I think startup projects, if they would like to work on improving the situation in the Mediterranean region, what should be the topics that they should cover? What kind of businesses? I think this is what I understood, or did you get something else?
Because I'm wondering from which side it's coming, like what is the purpose behind it? So what is the plan of the person, so I can reply better, because I've been in so many events with the business angels. I can reply to this question, but I don't understand where it's going.
Someone has, I think, well, oui, vous avez une réponse à ça, Monsieur Moustapha?
Ouais, j'ai une proposition. Ça serait de mettre, bon, je suppose que dans chaque pays, nous avons des incubateurs pour ces startups. Et l'idée de faire un incubateur méditerranéen, c'est ça, pourrait peut-être être une bonne idée, et de faire du networking entre les startups des différents pays. Peut-être un incubateur qui pourrait être situé dans n'importe quel pays, en fait, pourrait servir, comment je vais dire ça, d'emplacement où les start-upers peuvent avoir des échanges d'expériences intéressantes.
Merci, Monsieur Moustapha. Ouais, l'idée d'essayer de jumeler les efforts des incubateurs locaux, régionaux, internationaux, parce que chaque incubateur a vraiment des idées innovantes et on peut vraiment s'en servir, surtout au niveau des pays du Sud. Mais je pense que, I think, Omhani, what the person wanted to ask is about what kind of businesses startups should focus on. Of course, I think it should be around the top skills, the top priorities, the top topics in the digital age. However, it should take into consideration, of course, the innovative and creative aspects that Omhani, I think you presented in your presentation today. Yes, correctly. So Amiral is giving us more explanation. She said the purpose is to be working on projects that are interested for Mediterranean area. So what is needed for the Mediterranean area? I think this is what she wants to say.
I'm happy to reply to this, but I think we always forget, because we are used to start businesses the old style, third industrial revolution. We need to solve problems that are like for people. We don't need to create another business. We need to create something that solves some communities or some people's real problems. So, for example, something very heavy is the processes. So when we talk about processes for applying for help, for loans, for bank accounts, for anything like that, this is a real problem. Processes are very heavy everywhere. So for example, a company, a startup could actually focus on developing processes that are like fast track. So they would help other entities or other people to go through the very heavy processes in a fast way. This is, for example, the kind of thing that they could focus on. But I think what is important, because I see a lot of startups and I'm mentoring many of them, it's not about just creating another business. It is not anymore about that. It's about creating value. So how is the new business going to help people around you? And if you don't go and talk to people around you to see what they need, then you won't be able to create this new business. I think this is the way that I would like to reply.
We can confirm.
Correct. Mr. Rabih, I think you have your mic unmuted.
Yeah.
Would you like to add something?
No, I wanted to mention that any potential project should, whether a startup or a development project, should take into consideration the United Nations SDGs, respecting the environment, recycling, inclusive work, gender, etc. All these pillars. And I would like to add also that the ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce, has created a network of for supporting startups in collaboration with the ESQA, the United Nations Committee for the region, and with Veritech. It's a business development organization. So this would create like synergies and link startups between each other. If anyone would like to have information about it, they can visit the ICC or ESQA regarding this young entrepreneurship program. I would like to thank you for your excellent moderation and thank all the participants and panelists for their very insightful presentation. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rabih. We have another question coming from Jordan, and I think this question is for Mrs. Francesca. Why you chose garment sector in Jordan in public employment services field? Do other sectors have the opportunity to employ more and to focus on? So I'm reading from one of the participants' questions, and I think this is related to Mrs. Francesca's presentation when you gave the example of the garment sector creating jobs in Jordan for women, I think.
Yes, I provided a short reply in the chat already, but I will repeat also maybe because that's interest of other participants. The example I gave is an example of a project or an initiative which was implemented by the Jordanian government. So it's not our own initiative, it's an initiative done by the Jordanians. That was their assessment of the situation, the fact that the garment sector is an important sector for employment creation, also because it's highly subject to exports, and the Jordanian government hoped that that could create jobs, especially for women. However, what they noticed was that the places where the factories were located were considered unsafe for women to travel to the place of work. And that's why very few women were picking up these jobs that were available in the sector. So what they did, they basically set up what they call satellite factories, which were located in different 22 different rural areas, which were considered safer for women to reach. And that generated, as I mentioned, more than 7,000 jobs within a period of about 10 years. What we have been said, what we have been told was also that, of course, the project was not easy. It had some challenges because many of these women that started to work in these satellite factories were not, did not have all the right skills to perform the jobs, even soft skills, horizontal skills, apart from technical skills. So what the government did with the support of some bilateral donors was also to set up specific training where women could learn specific skills that were useful for the job. And that's where they are now, and they are hoping to see an increase of productivity also thanks to these different training. Of course, there are other sectors which are generators of employment, or there are sectors that simply generate growth. There are sectors that don't generate that much employment but generate high growth. So that's obviously a choice that is totally in the hands of the government, because that's a national decision. And obviously what we have seen by working in different countries in different sectors is that you really need to go vertical and to investigate what emergencies needs in that specific sectors to be able to then understand what are the skilling priorities. We are doing that work in a number of countries, as I mentioned, and I think the results are very, very positive. Then we can really provide specific information to education and training providers, but also to the companies that obviously strive to look people with the right skills. Yeah, I would stop here given the time.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Francesco. Anything else from our dear speakers? Yes, Mrs. Omhani.
I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity, and I also wanted to highlight something. In all your events, I've seen that you really put a focus on gender equality. I've been to so many panels where it's like, I'm really sorry, it's always like men and men and men and men, and here I'm like happy because I'm looking at the screen, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect gender equality. So really, like, well done and thank you again. So I'm like, I'm just happy. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed, the gender issue is very relevant to our webinar, but it's also very relevant to the hot topic, which is the labor market issues that we are dealing with today. So I hope that current and future projects will consider that. And as Mr. Rabih said, we have to follow the SDGs, and the gender issue is very, very relevant indeed. Thank you very much, dear speakers. It was an honor for me to be here today, and I was really glad to monitor and facilitate this webinar. I've learned a lot from you all. I invite you to send all your presentations to Nadine, and Nadine will be able to share them with us all. We are going to write a paper on this webinar, so all your comments and the information that you provided, the data that you analyzed today will be very relevant for us. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here and being very attentive. Thank you also for the participants who bore with us and until the end. I hope it was informative and interesting for all of you.